Shabbat Shalom, everyone. We had a good night's rest. Little gray outside, but still a beautiful day here in Sag Harbor. And we're back here at our temporary home in the Whalers Church, upstairs in my second floor office, and I'm certainly ready to begin Shabbat with all of you. If you have your Sidurim handy, in a moment we're going to begin our service together on page 186, but we'll begin as we always do with a little bit of warming up, a little bit of singing to get ourselves awake, both physically and spiritually. Yallai lai 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 yallai lai 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 yallai lai 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 ai lai 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 yallai lai 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 ai lai 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 yai lai 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 ai lai 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 yai lai 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 ai lai lai. Shabbat Shalom. Again, everyone, let's turn to page 186, and we'll begin our service this morning together with thanks and gratitude. Modeh lefanecha melech chai v'kayam. Modeh lefanecha melech chai v'kayam. Modeh lefanecha. Modeh lefanecha. I offer thanks to you, Adonai, ever living sovereign, that you have restored my soul to me in mercy. How great is your trust. We turn now to page 192, Matovu. Matovu, Oalecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Israel. Matovu, Oalecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Israel. We'll turn now to page 195 and we'll offer a blessing for our bodies together in English at the bottom of the page. Don't let me fall, as a stone falls upon the hard ground, and don't let my hands become dry as the twigs of a tree, when the wind beats down the last leaves, and when the storm raises dust from the earth with anger and howling. Don't let me fall. I have asked for so much, but as a blade of your grass in a distant wild field, let's drop a seed in the lap of the earth and dies away. Sow in me your living breath, as you sow a seed in the earth. Baruch atah Adonai, rofech kol basar umafli lasot. We turn now to page 196, a prayer for our souls. Elohai neshama shenatata b'tehorahi. 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 Read together in English at the bottom of the page. My God, the soul you have given me is pure. You created it, you shaped it, you breathed it into me, and you protect it within me. For as long as my soul is within me, I offer thanks to you, Adonai, my God and God of my ancestors, source of all creation, sovereign of all souls. Praised are you, Adonai, in whose hand is every living soul and the breath of humankind. Baruch atah Adonai, asher bi'ado nefesh kol chai, veruach kol besar ish. We rise in body or spirit as we turn to page 198, Nisim B'chol Yom, a series of blessings for daily miracles. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lasach bivina, lavchin ben yom uben laila. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, pokeach ivrim. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, matir asurim. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, zokef kefufim. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, rokah haaretz al hamayim. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, hamechin mitzadei haver. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, malbish harumim. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, hanoten le'aev koach. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, hamavir sheina meinai utnuma me'afapai. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, shasani b'tzelem Elohim. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, shasani ben chorin. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, shasani Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, ozer Yisrael bigvura. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, oter Yisrael v'tifarah. If you're still standing at home, please be seated. We're now on page 204. We're going to read together at the top of the page a blessing for the study of Torah, and then at the bottom of the page in English as well. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. O Adonai, our God, let the words of Torah be sweet in our mouths and the mouths of your people Israel, so that we, our descendants, and the descendants of all your people Israel, may know you by studying your Torah for its own sake. Blessed are you, Adonai, who teaches Torah to your people Israel. Baruch atah Adonai, hamelamed Torah, le'amo Yisrael. We're now on page 206. Elu devarim she'ein lahem shiur, she'adam ochel pirotehem ba'olam hazeh, ve'akeren kayemet lo le'olam haba, ve'elu hen kibud avaim ugmilut chasadim, והשכמת בית המדרש שחרית וערבית, והכנסת אורחים וביקור חולים, והכנסת כלה לוויית המת ועיון תפילה, והבעת שלום בין אדם לחברו, ותלמוד תורה כנגד כולם. We rise as we turn to page 212 for the opening blessing of Pezukei de Zimra, in body or spirit. Baruch she'amar ve'aya ha'olam baruch hu, baruch hoseh bereshit, baruch homer ve'yoseh, baruch gozer u'mekayem, baruch merachem al haaretz, Baruch merachem al habriot, Baruch meshalem sacharto lirehav, Baruch halad vekayam lanetzach, Baruch bodeh umatzil, Baruch shemo, bishvachot vizmirot negadelcha, unshabecha nefercha naskir shimcha v'namlichecha malkeinu Eloheinu, יחיד חי העולמים, מלך משובח ומפואר דיד שמו הגדול, ברוך אתה אדוני, מלך מהולל, בתשבחות. If you're still standing at home, please be seated. We're on page 214. Tov lehodot l'Adonai, Tov lehodot l'Adonai, ulezamer leshimcha elyon, Tov lehodot l'Adonai, בחסדך, ואמונתך בלילות, ואמונתך בלילות, טוב להודות לאדוני. עלי אסור ועלי נבל, עלי היגיון בכינור, כי שימחתני אדוני בפועלך, במעשה ידיך רנן. מה גדלו מעשיך היה, מאוד עמקו מחשבותיך. מה גדלו מעשיך היה, מאוד עמקו מחשבותיך. מה גדלו מעשיך היה, מאוד עמקו מחשבותיך. We're now on the top of page 215. Ashrei Yoshvei Veitecha, Od Yalelucha, Od Yalelucha. Ashrei Yoshvei Veitecha, Od Yalelucha, Od Yalelucha, Selah Shem. V'anachnu nevarech ya, me'ata ve'ad olam, me'ata ve'ad olam, me'ata ve'ad olam, hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Psalm 150 on page 218. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Hallelujah, 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 El Bekocho, hallelujah, Birkiauzo, hallelujah, Bigvurotav, hallelujah, Kerov Kulo, hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, 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 beteka shofar, hallelujah, benevel bechinor, hallelujah, betofu machol, hallelujah, beminim vehugav. Hallelujah, 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 betziltele shama, hallelujah, betziltele trua. Kol hanshama tehallelujah, hallelujah, 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 Nishmat kol echai, tevarech et shimcha Adonai Eloheinu. Continue silent to the bottom of page 219. Now on page 220. Ilu finu maleh shira kayam, ulshoneinu rina kamon galav, vesiftotenu shevach kemarchevei rakia, veinenu meirot kashemesh vechayareach, וידינו פרוסות כנשרי שמיים, ורגלינו קלות כאיילות. אין אנחנו מספיקים להודות לך, אדוני אלוהינו, ואלוהי אבותינו ואמותינו, ולברך שמו. We're on page 222, second paragraph down from the top. Shochen ad ma'arom v'kadosh shemo v'chatur hanenu tzadikim b'Adonai l'hayesharim na'avat tehillah mefi yesharim תתעלו דברי צדיקים, תתברכו בלשון חסידים, תתרוממו בקרב קדושים, תתקדשו בקהלות, רבבות עמך בית ישראל ורינה יתפאר, שמך מלכנו בכל דור ודור. יא ביי יא ביי 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 ביי, יא ביי יא ביי ביי ביי, יא ביי 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 ביי, יא ביי 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 ביy, ay babay, bye bye. We rise in body or spirit as we turn to page 223 for the concluding blessing Apasuke de Zimra, and we'll remain standing again in body or spirit through the Chatzi Kaddish on the next page and the Baruch Hu on the page after that. Yishtabach Shimecha Alad Malkeinu, Ha'el HaMelech HaGadol VeHaKadosh B'Shamayim u'Ba'aretz, Ki Lecha Na'e Adonai Eloheinu V'Elokei Avotinu Ve'imotinu, Shirushbachal Zimra Uzu Memshala Netzach, Gedula Ugvura, Tila V'Tiferet, Kedusha U'Malchut, Brachot vehodaot me'ata ve'ad olam, Baruch atah Adonai el melech gadol batishbachot, nehel hahodaot Adonai niflaot, abocher b'shirei zimra melech el chei haolamim. יתקדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, ועל מהדי רחרתי, והמליך מלכותי, וחייכון יומכון וחיי לכל בית ישראל, בהגלה ובזמן קריב, ואמרו אמן. יש מרבה מברך, לעולם לעלמי עלמיה, יתברך וישתבח, ויתבהר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמי דקודשא בריחו, Leila min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, dameran ve'alma, v'yimeru amen. Barechu et Adonai hamevorach. Baruch Adonai hamevorach leolam vaed. If you're still standing at home, please be seated. We're now on page 228. Begin reading together in English at the bottom of the page, and then the 3 lines in Hebrew just above. Praised are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, creator of light and darkness, who makes peace and fashions all things. In mercy you illumine the world and those who live upon it. In your goodness you daily renew creation. How numerous are your works, Adonai, in wisdom you form them all, filling the earth with your creatures. Be praised, Adonai, our God, for the excellent work of your hands, and for the lights you created, may they glorify you. Shine a new light upon Zion, that we all may swiftly merit its radiance. Praised are you, Adonai, creator of all heavenly lights. Or Chadash al Zion Tahir. Or Chadash al Zion Tahir. V'nizkechu lanu meheira leoro. V'nizkechu lanu meheira leoro. Yadadai bim bim bam, yadadai bim bam, yadadai bim bim bam, yadadai. Yadadai bim bim bam, yadadai bim bam, yadadai bim bim bam, yadadai Baruch atah Adonai, Yotzer hameorot. Turn now to page 230. Begin by reading together in English towards the top of the page and then the Hebrew at the bottom. How deeply you have loved us, Adonai our God, gracing us with surpassing compassion. On account of our forebears whose trust led you to teach them the laws of life, be gracious to us, teaching us as well. O merciful one, have mercy on us by making us able to understand and discern, to heed, learn, and teach, and lovingly to observe, perform, and fulfill all that is in your Torah. V'ha'erinenu b'toratecha v'davek libeinu b'mitzvotecha v'yachel levaveinu le'ahava u'lira et shemecha v'lo nevosh v'lo nikalem v'lo nikashel le'olam va'ed ki b'shem kodshecha hagadol v'hanora b'atachnu nagila v'nismecha v'yeshuatecha Ve'abienu leshalom me'arba kanfot haaretz ve'tolichenu kol memiut le'artzenu ki el poel yeshuot ata uvanu b'charta ve'keravtanu le'shimcha hagadol selah be'emet להודות לך ליחדך באהבה, ברוך אתה אדוני, הבוחר בעמו ישראל באהבה. שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד. We're now on page 234. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבבך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברתם בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם להיות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. We're now on page 236. ויאמר אדוני אל משה לאמור דבר אל בני ישראל ואמרת עליהם ועשו להם ציצית על כנפי בגדיהם לדורותם ונתנו על ציצית על כנף פתיל תכלת והיה לכם לציצית וראיתם אותו וזכרתם לכל מצוות אדוני ועשיתם אותם ולא תטורו אחרי לבבכם ואחרי עיניכם אשר אתם זונים אחריהם למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם אלוהים אני אדוני אלוהיכם Adonai Elohechem Emet. We'll read together on the top of page 239. Emet, there is no place where you are not, even in the wilderness, there is your word. Emet, the pen strokes of lightning, white fire, black flame, stir the soul's passion, guide our sacred way, true and enduring is Torah. Your truth for us is certain and established now and forevermore. Like Moses, Miriam, and all Israel, we sing out and rejoice. We're now on the bottom of page 238, beginning 4 lines up from where the English is in Hebrew. Tehillah le'elyon baruch hu mevorach Moshe u'Miriam u'bnei Yisrael lechanu shira b'simcha rabba ve'amru chulam Mi chamocha vaylim Adonai Mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh Nora tehilot osefet lem Yai lai 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 Shira chadasha shimchu gehudim לשמך על שפתיים, יחד כולם הודו, והמליכו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. צור ישראל קומה בעזרת ישראל ופדחן יומך יהודה וישראל גואלנו אדוני צבאות שמו קדוש ישראל ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל. We'll begin the Amidah together on page 242 and then continue silently. Please go at your own pace, and when you're finished, you may be seated. Adonai sefatai tiftach ufri yagi tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. If you're still doing your silent Amidah, please continue at your own pace. For those that have finished, we are going to turn to page 324 and rise in body or spirit. And for those who are still continuing silently, as soon as you finish, you can catch up with us. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el HaGadol, HaGibor HaNorah, Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'koneh HaKol, V'zocher Chasdei Avot V'imahot, U'mevih Geula Livnei B'neihem, Leman Shemo B'Yava, Melech Ozer U'Moshiach U'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Abraham Bezrat Sarah, Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechayei Metim Ata Rav Loshia, Morid Hatal, Mechakel Chaim Bechesed, Nechayei Metim Berachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim Verafech Olim, Umatir Asurim, Umekayem emunato lishenei afar michamocha b'gevurot umido melech melech memit umechayev umatzmiach Yeshua v'ne'eman ata l'chayot metim baruch atah Adonai mechayeh hametim. We're on page 326. נקדש את שמך בעולם, כשם שמעתי שמה אותו בשמי מרום, ככתוב על יד נביאך, וקרא זה אל זה ואמר, קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, מלוך כל הארץ, כבודו. Adir, Adirenu, Adonai, Adonenu, Ma'adir Shimecha Bechol Haaretz, Baruch Kevod Adonai Mimkomo, Echad Eloheinu, Hu Avinu Malkeinu, Hu Moshienu Vehu Yashmienu, Berachamav Le'nei Kol Chai, Ani Adonai Elohechem, Yimloch Adonai le'olam, Elohai Tzion, Ledor Vador, Hallelujah. Ledor Vador, Ledor Vador, Ledor Vador, Nagid Golecha, Ledor Vador, Ledor Vador, Ledor Vador, Nagid Golecha, Ulenetzach Netzachim, Kedushatcha Nakdish, Kedushatcha Nakdish, Leshivcha Eloheinu, Mipinu Lo Yamush, Le'olam, Le'olam Va'en, Baruch atah Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh. If you're still standing at home, please be seated. We're now on the top of page 329. Yismechu b'malechutecha, shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat. Yismechu b'malechutecha, shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat. Mekadshim, nekadshei shiri Shabbat. Kulam yisbehu v'yitagu mituvecha Shabbat. Yismechu v'malechutecha, shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat. Le'ashvi ratzita bo v'kidashto Shabbat. Chemnat yamim oto kerata Shabbat. Yismechu v'malechutecha, shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat. Zecher lemase v'reshit Shabbat. Zecher lemase Na'aseh Bereshit Shabbat Yismechu V'malechutecha Shomrei 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 Shabbat V'korei Oneg Shabbat Eloheinu Eloheinu Imotenu Ritzei Ritzei V'imnuchateinu Kadeshenu b'mitzvotecha v'ten chelkenu b'toratecha Zahabenu mituvecha v'samechenu v'shuatecha v'taher libeinu le'odecha v'emet v'anchileinu Adonai Eloheinu Elai 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 Bi'ava ratzon Shabbat kodshecha v'yinuchu Israel mekadshe shemecha Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh HaShabbat. Let's read together now in the middle of page 330. On this Shabbat day, as you graciously receive our prayers, help us to hear your call. Grant us enough health to fulfill our duties and the compassion we need to attend to others. Teach us humility that we may perceive our own faults and grant us the wisdom to be forgiving of others. Give us the courage to be true to our highest selves and the charity to see the best in those around us. Give us patience enough not to become discouraged, hope enough to overcome all fears for the future, and faith enough to know your presence. O source of blessing, look with favor upon us. May our offerings be acceptable to you. Baruch atah Adonai she'otcha lematcha bira navud. We turn now to page 332 at the bottom of the page. We're going to read together in English each of the paragraphs and then end each paragraph with the Hebrew words Modim Anachnu Lach. For the expanding grandeur of creation, worlds known and unknown, galaxies beyond galaxies filling us with awe and challenging our imaginations, Modim Anachnu Lach. For this fragile planet Earth, its times and tides, its sunsets and seasons, Modim Anachnu Lach. For the joy of human life, its wonders and surprises, its hopes and achievements, Modim Anachnu Lach. For human community, our common past and future hope, our oneness transcending all separation, our capacity to work for peace and justice in the midst of hostility and oppression, Modim Anachnu Lach. For high hopes and noble causes, for faith without fanaticism, for understanding of views not shared, Modim Anachnu Lach. For all who have labored and suffered for a fair world, who have lived so that others might live in dignity and freedom, Modim Anachnu Lach. For human liberties and sacred rights, for opportunities to change and grow, to affirm and choose, Modim Anachnu Lach. We pray that we may live not by our fears, but by our hopes, not by our words, but by our deeds. Baruch atah Adonai hatov shimcha ulechanae lehodot. We're now on page 334, prayer for peace. Sim shalom tova uvracha chen v'chesed v'rachamim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael hamecha Barucheinu yotzerenu kulanu kechad ve'or panecha ki ve'or panecha natata lanu Adonai Eloheinu sim shalom tova uvracha chen v'chesed v'rachamim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael hamecha Torat chaim ve'ahavat chesed u'tzedaka u'bracha ve'rachamim nechaim ve'shalom sim shalom tova u'bracha chen v'chesed ve'rachamim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael Amecha Baruch atah Adonai Ha'el HaKadosh. Rech et amo Israel bashalom. I don't know why I went to HaKadosh. Well, Kadosh, Shalom, very much both dear to my heart, but you need to say the right bracha for the right prayer. Baruch atah Adonai marech et amo Yisrael bashalom. Being an exhausted parent has clearly impacted my sleepiness a little bit. My apologies. In any case, we're going to end, and I think actually this is a good place to end our Amidah together on page 336, and we'll read together at the bottom of the page. I need strength, humility, courage, patience, strength to control my passions, humility to assess my own worth, courage to rise above defeats, and patience to cleanse myself of imperfections, and wisdom to learn and live by our sacred teachings. Let me not be discouraged by my failings, and let me take heart from all that is good and noble in my character. Keep me from falling victim to cynicism. Teach me sincerity and enthusiasm. Endow me with perception and courage, that I may serve others with compassion and love. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, yaseh shalom, Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'meru. Amen. Shabbat shalom, everyone. So as we've done the last few weeks, which I think works a lot better, I'm going to give my drash this morning before we begin the Torah sermons formally. And so this morning we're reading from Parshat Behar B'chukotai, and it's really a double portion that concludes the book of Vayikra, the book of Leviticus. And it is a wide-ranging set since it is two parshas, and yet at the same time they complement each other in many ways. A lot of the conversation, certainly at the beginning of the parsha, is about the Shemitah year, the Yovel, which is the 50th year, both of these special times of the year designations for how, for example, commerce is meant to apply, and the release of land from purchases being made from ancestral lands, the idea that the land itself should be given a rest every 7 years. All of these things that are really quite significant to the land of Israel very specifically, but also in a second I'll share a teaching from one of my teachers, which I think also expands this beyond just simply laws related to the land of Israel or to the land specifically, and really are actually broader indications of what our understanding of a Jewish society ought to look like, an Israelite society, a modern Jewish society, whatever we want to call it, and all of these various constructs. So if you're following at home, in a bit we're going to read from chapter 25 in the Women's Torah commentary that's on page 755, and in the Plav Chumash it's on page 853. So again, 755 for the Women's Commentary, 853 for the Plav Chumash. Bahar begins with chapter 25. We're going to be reading from 25 just a little further in, beginning with verse 35, if memory serves. Okay, but basically the main thrust, as I said at the beginning, is about the Shemitah and the Yovel, and at the end we get this section that's known really as blessings and curses, descriptions in very great detail of what good things will happen to the Israelites when they enter the land of Israel, should they follow God's hukim, as I talked about last night, God's statutes. And if not, there is also what are referred to as curses or tochecha, rebuke. It's one of the few sections of the Torah in which we really get these kinds of examples, and therefore is treated rather differently than most other things, and traditionally actually was meant to be read either in a whisper or read very, very quickly, so as people would not become, concerned about all of these potential curses. But I want to focus a little bit more broadly than anything in one specific, and I want to share a teaching from one of my teachers, who unfortunately I had very little time with, but it's somebody who I have a great respect for. Her name is Rabbi Dr. Devorah Weisberg. She is the Dean of the Rabbinical School in the Los Angeles campus of HUC JIR, where Lou got her 2 master's degrees in the School of Education, the School of Nonprofit Management, and where I spent a year, in addition to my rabbinical studies, getting my master's in Jewish education. And during my time there, I was able to, in a few instances, study with and from Dr. Weisberg, and she really is truly one of the great Torah scholars, great scholars, the Jewish people of the last, certainly in my lifetime. and it really is a treasure to the HUCJR family. So I hope at some point or another, one way or another, we'll be able to get her to teach something for us here in this community. But in meanwhile, I want to just share something that she wrote this week for the Reform Judaism website, and I think it's really quite powerful, quite provocative, quite powerful, quite interesting. So I'm just going to share a few excerpts from it, but certainly if you want to read it in total, you can go to the website and read it at any point that feels convenient to you. So she titles her teaching, "What Political System Does the Torah Favor?" Okay, so right off the bat, we know this is something that could potentially be contentious, but in her really unique way, it's not where she's going with this. She's going with this in really a very deep spiritual and I would say sociological and societal kind of way. So she writes as follows: "I have never thought of the Torah as a political manifesto. That is, I do not see the Torah as advancing a political system comparable to the type of systems that we see in contemporary society, nor do I think of Judaism as a religious system that mandates a particular political stance. However, if we were looking for a political vision of society in the Torah, Parshat Bahar Bechukotai is where I would start. Leviticus 25," she continues, "offers a vision for the relationship between the individual and community, an approach to resources and the distribution of resources, and an understanding of the limits of ownership and private property. In Leviticus 26, one of the two chapters of the Torah known as Tochacha, rebuke, follows with a detailed image of what happens when a community fails to live up to its values. In Leviticus 25, God tells Moses to instruct the Israelites how to live properly in the land where they are journeying, referring in this case to entering the land of Israel and referring to the laws of Shemitah and the laws of Yovel. These limits on ownership of land extend to the ability to control other human beings." Okay, so she makes the connection between, again, the specific nature of Shemitah and the limitations of the Yovel and the things that are put in place. And she says that really these limits on ownership of land are not just about that. They extend actually even beyond that to the control of other human beings. And certainly there is a long description of how the relationship between indentured servitude and ownership and all of those kinds of things are related. So it's not just about the land, it's also about people. Okay, so she continues, "If we were tempted to dismiss Leviticus 25 as a utopian vision, Leviticus 26 offers a grim picture of what happens when we place ourselves at the center of the universe, disregarding the claims of other human beings, the land, and God. Leviticus 26 spells out the consequences of ignoring these claims. I will make your skies like iron and your earth like copper. Your land shall not yield its produce, nor shall the trees of the land yield their fruit." The Torah underscores important truths about maintaining a just and humane society and the challenges of communal life, she continues. Even in a world where humans desperately need each other for survival, there are individuals who use their power to acquire resources and control other human beings. They believe that power and wealth can insulate them from perceived dangers, such as those posed by less fortunate, from disease, from the rigors of climate change, and even from death itself. People barricade themselves in gated communities, she says, build bunkers to withstand cataclysmic upheaval, and invest in technology that will, they hope, allow them to preserve their bodies until science finds a way to extend life. But the Torah warns us that if we fail to live up to our commitments, our cities and places of sanctuary will be ruins, and the land will be desolate, says chapter 26, verses 31 and 32. So here she now draws to her conclusion. I want to close this parasha and my commentaries on the book of Leviticus, and she's been writing for several weeks, by arguing that the Torah's vision for holiness and wholeness lies in its insistence throughout Leviticus that Moses, when announcing the behaviors that God desires, speaks to the entire people. Leviticus is aware that each individual experiences unique moments of joy and gratitude, sickness and pain, but its focus is on the community of Israel. It is the Israelite community that has the capacity for holiness through its collective acceptance of a vision. Whether Israel is guided by a king, by judges, by priests, or by prophets, the Torah's vision cannot be achieved by leaders alone. Only when individuals see themselves as part of the community, responsible for their own behavior and for the welfare of those around them, can they become an Am Kadosh, a holy people. She ends, if we understand this message, then the book of Leviticus ceases to be a recitation of somewhat bizarre practices and emerges as a blueprint for bringing the divine into the world. So I thought this was a particularly wonderful building upon last week's Torah study discussion, their wonderful panelists and with Ruth moderating, which was really trying to tackle this very complicated question of what is kadosh, what is holiness, how do we understand it? We got three really interesting and unique perspectives last week from our panelists, from Judy and from Emily and from Brad. And this week we get from Dr. Weisberg something that actually I never really had thought of in those terms. I never would have thought of associating the description of the book of Leviticus with the idea of a political system of sorts. And she, as she says from the outset, she doesn't see this as a political manifesto. She's not saying this in the way in which we tend to define politics today. But what she's describing is that politics really, in the essence, is the means by which a society is meant to govern itself and to hold itself accountable and to relate to itself. And of course, she's not suggesting that the Torah or Judaism or anything, quite frankly, disavows the importance of the individual or the uniqueness of the individual experience. But societally speaking, culturally speaking, politically speaking, legally speaking, the collective is such an important, if not entirely necessary, component of the way in which all of this is meant to be structured and built. And that what she's suggesting is that if you were trying to identify a political system, right, a system of societal interaction and governance, if it exists anywhere in the Torah, even if not explicitly, implicitly, is contained really largely within this parsha and within this social construct and really this theological construct of, what is good behavior and what is bad, what is best for the society and the group as a whole and what is worst for it. How do we hold each other accountable? How do we create systems of fairness and equity and justice within that community? How do we prevent the individual or individuals from perverting the ultimate success of the communal experience? And I think it's a complicated reality. We still see that challenge playing out today everywhere, right? It is hard for human beings to live together in peace. And what we require more than anything else is a structure and a system that is in place in which power is not held by any one particular person or one particular group absolutely. It doesn't mean that there aren't structures. It doesn't mean that there aren't people above other people and responsible for things that others aren't. It simply means that the dignity piece, the expectation piece, the equity piece is not negotiable, that it cannot reside solely with one group or one individual. And that if one lives in the fantasy world, as she explains, of being able to hide behind gated communities and walls and this and that, she's using contemporary examples, but it's part of our human history, right? Is that sort of feeling like our loss of control is the source of our fear. And the way to overcome our fear is to regain as much control or the perception of control as we can possibly have. But the Torah basically warns us against this idea because in essence, it says whatever, us as human beings think we are in control of, right, from a theological standpoint, we're not nearly in as much control as we think. And so the idea of trying to hoard or hold on to or gather up more resources at the lack of others in our community is simply anathema to the way that the Torah conceives of how a society of Israelites and ultimately a society of Jews ought to be structured. So I think there's a lot for us to unpack here. Some of it certainly we'll get to in our Torah study, but credit to Dr. Weisberg, who again writes so eloquently and thinks so deeply. And I suggest if you've never heard about her before, you've never heard from her before, my guess is these days there must be tons of it online. If you need some help finding it, videos, things that she's written, just a phenomenal scholar. And I certainly want to highlight her and thank her for the time that I had in studying alongside her. So with that, I wish you all again a Shabbat Shalom. And we're going to turn now to page 362 in our prayer books to begin Seder Kriyat HaTorah. And a reminder in a moment, we're going to begin reading on page 853 in the Plat Chumash or 755 in the Women's Torah Commentary. In both cases, we're looking for the book of Vayikra, chapter 25, verse 35 to 44. So if you'll just give me 1 second, I'll get our Torah and everything situated here. אין כמוך באלוהים אדוני ואין כמעשיך מלכותך מלכות כל עולמים וממשלתך בכל דור ודור. אדוני מלך, אדוני מלך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. אדוני עוז עמו ייתן, אדוני יברך את עמו בשלום. הרחמים היטיב ברצונך את ציון, תבנה חומות ירושלים, כי בך לבד בטחנו, מלך אל רם ונישא, אדון עולמים. כי מציון תצא תורה, כי מציון תצא תורה, ודבר אדוני מירושלים. ברוך שנתן תורה תורה, ברוך שנתן תורה תורה, לעמו ישראל מקדושתו. שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו אדוני אחד. אחד אלוהינו גדול אדוננו קדוש שמו. גדול אדוני תהיו נרוממה שמו יחדיו. לך אדוני הגדולה והגבורה והתפארת והנצח וההוד, כי כה בשמיים ובארץ, כי כה בשמיים ובארץ. לך אדוני הממלכה והמתנשא לכל ראש. רוממו אדוני אלוהינו והשתחוו לקודשו. רוממו אדוני אלוהינו והשתחוו להר קודשו. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. One second. And a reminder, since we are concluding the third book of the Torah, when we finish, we'll say the words Chazak, Chazak, Benit Chazek before we do the concluding blessing. Baruch Hu et Adonai Amborach. Baruch Adonai Amborach le'olam va'ed. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol amim v'na'ata lanu et torato. Baruch ata Adonai noten haTorah. Amen. Amen. וכי ימוך אחיך ומטה ידו עמך, וחזקת בו גר ותושב וחי עמך. אל תיקח מאיתו נשך ותרבית, ויראת מאלוהיך. וכי אחיך עמך, ואת כספך לא תיתן לו בנשך, ובמרבית לא תיתן אוכלך. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, לתת לכם את ארץ כנען, להיות לכם לאלוהים. וכי ימוך אחיך עמך ונמכר לך, Lo tavod bo avodat abed, kesachir ketoshav yeh imach, ad shenat hayovel yavod imach, ve'yatza me'imach hu ubanav imo, ve'shav el mishpachto, ve'el achuzat avotav yashuv. Ki avadaihem asher hotzeti otam me'eretz Mitzrayim lo yimacheru mimkeret abed lo tirdevo befarech ve'yaretam Elohecha ve'avdacha v'amatecha asher yulach me'et hagoyim asher sevivotechem mehem tikenu eved ve'ima. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Amen. Okay. Oh, I forgot. Chazak, chazak, v'nitchazek. This is where having Cantor Lauren here to remind me would be always appreciated. Helpful. Okay. All right. Before we address the Torah, we'll take a moment to offer our Mishaberach this morning. Up here. We're on page 371 in our prayer books. Mishaberach Avotenu v'Imotenu Avraham Yitzchak v'Yaakov Sarah Rivka Rachel v'Leah u'yivarech et hacholim ha'elu. We'll begin by thinking of those in our community and connected to our community who are in need of healing this morning. We are thinking of Dolores Michka, Estella Gass, Sylvia Orn, Yerachmiel Ben Hinda, Paloma Chauhan, Samuel Moskowitz, Audrey Lubo, Chaim Live, Robert Posner, Joyce Weinberg, Rick Gold, Stu Pollock, Jane London, Catherine Guarino, Amunah Chava, Raina Walsh, Deirdre Klein, Stephanie Skitt, Judy Stern, Miriam Cornfield, Roz Brody, Chana Ruth Bat Sarah, Marlise Silverberg, Susan Spruce, Fagel Tzipora Bat Elisheva Bat Sarah, Richard Gambino, Michelle Sawicki, Idolbasha Bat Yitzchak, Tzvi Menachem and Chaim, Rivka Bat Devora, Amy and Gavin Tucker, Janice Kurz, David Dowling, Israel Ben Yitzchak, Benzion Ben Moshe, Lorraine Danis, Buddy Kossoff, Shelley Newmark, David Kyle Klotman, Rivka Bat Rachel, Sarah Bat Chana, Moshe Eliezer Ben Sivia, Peretz Ben Yehuda, and Leah Bat Naomi. If you're thinking of anyone else that we did not just mention, now would be the time to mention our names at home or simply to hold your loved ones in your hearts and minds. As we continue again on page 371, Hakadosh Baruch Hu Yimalei Rachamim Aleichem Lahachalimam Lerabutam Lachazikam Vishlach Lahem Mehira Refuah Shlema Min Hashamayim Refuat HaNefesh Refuat HaGuf Hashtabag Alav Zman Karev and Omar. Amen. May the one who blessed our ancestors Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah bless and heal those who are suffering. May the Blessed Holy One be filled with compassion for their health to be restored and their strength to be revived. May God swiftly send them a complete renewal of body and spirit, and let us say together, Amen. El Refanala, El Refanala, El Refanala, Refuah Shelema, El Refanalo, El Refanalo, El Refanalo, Refuah Shelema. Okay, so we're going to turn to the bottom of page 370 for Hagbah and Galila, which is really more Galila these days than Hagbah. But again, we'll rise in body or spirit. Vezot haTorah asher sa Moshe lifnei bnei Yisrael al pi Adonai v'yahad Moshe Torah, 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 Tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 Tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 Tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 Tziva lanu Moshe. Okay, so we're going to read our Haftarah this morning, which is from the book of Jeremiah. So for those of you that are in my Wednesday Heschel class, as we talked about, Jeremiah is a rather challenging read, mostly because Jeremiah's prophecy has to deal with the end of the kingdoms, in particular the kingdom of Judah and the destruction of Jerusalem. And of course, we can draw, and we'll see a very immediate connection to this week's Parsha, why Jeremiah and Jeremiah's prophecy in particular feels appropriate to a double portion that contains both blessing and cursing. So our reading will begin on page 880 if you have a Plav Chumash. Again, 880 if you're following at home, you're looking for Jeremiah chapter 16, verse 19 to begin, continuing to 17:14. Again, 16:19 in Jeremiah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'nviim tovim v'ratza b'divrehem hanemarim be'emet. Baruch atah Adonai abocher b'torah u'b'Moshe abdo Yisrael amo u'b'nvi'eh ha'emet v'hatzedek. Eternal One, my strength and my stronghold, my refuge in time of trouble. Nations from the ends of the earth shall come to you and say, our ancestors inherited false gods, empty and utterly useless. How can human beings make gods? They are not gods at all. Therefore, I am letting them know once and for all. I will make them known my might and power, and they shall know that I am called Adonai the Eternal. Judah's sin is inscribed with an iron pen, engraved with a diamond point on the tablet of their hearts and the horns of their altars, to remind their children of their altars and sacred poles near leafy trees on the high hills. I will give you wealth, all your treasures as spoil to a country bumpkin, the Haraite, because of the sin of your high places throughout your borders. You yourself will lose the heritage I gave you, and I will make you serve your enemies in a land you do not know. For you have kindled the flame of my wrath to burn a long time. Thus says the Eternal One, cursed are those who trust in mortals, making mortal flesh their strength, turning their hearts from the eternal. They shall be like a stunted tree in the desert, never seeing when good comes, dwelling in dry places in the wilderness, in a salt land where no one dwells. Blessed are those who trust in the eternal, whose trust is in the eternal. They shall be like a tree planted near water, sinking its roots by a watercourse, never noticing when the heat comes, its leaves green, careless of times of drought, never failing to bear fruit. The human heart is of all things the most deceitful, so perverse, who can understand it? The Eternal, I, the Eternal, search the heart and test the spirit, giving to all according to their ways, according to the fruit of their doings. Those who gain wealth by unjust means are like a partridge brooding eggs that do not hatch. In the middle of life, it will forsake them. At the end, they are known to be fools. A throne of glory exalted from the beginning is our holy shrine. O hope of Israel, Eternal One, those who forsake you shall be put to shame. Those who turn from you are written in the dust, for they have forsaken the fountain of living waters, the Eternal. Heal me, Eternal One, only then shall I be healed. Save me, and only then shall I be saved, for you are my praise. We're now back in our prayer books on page 372. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, tzur kol haolamim, tzadik bechol adorot, ha'el haneman haomer v'yosef, hamdaber umkayem, shekol devarav emet v'tzedek, al haTorah ve'al ha'avodah ve'al ha'nimim ve'al yom ha'shabbat hazeh shenatata lanu Adonai Eloheinu לקדושה ולמנוחה, לכבוד ולתפארת. על הכל, אדוני אלוהינו, אנחנו מודים לך ומברכים אותך. יתברך שמך בפי כל חי תמיד לעולם ועד, ברוך אתה אדוני, מקדש השבת. Amen. And we will rise in body or spirit as we turn to page 376 to offer a prayer for our country. Thus says Adonai, this is what I desire, to unlock the fetters of wickedness and untie the cords of lawlessness, to let the oppressed go free, to break off every yoke. Share our bread with the hungry and take the wretched poor into your home. And when you see the naked, give clothing, and do not ignore your own kin. If you banish the yoke from your midst and the menacing hand, the evil speech, if you offer compassion to the hungry and satisfy the famished creature, then your light shall shine in darkness. O guardian of life and liberty, may our nation always merit your protection. Teach us to give thanks for what we have by sharing it with those who are in need. Keep our eyes open to the wonders of creation and alert to the care of the earth. May we never be lazy in the work of peace, and may we honor those who have died in defense of our ideals. Grant our leaders wisdom and forbearance. May they govern with justice and compassion. Help us all to appreciate one another and to respect the many ways that we may serve you. May our homes be safe from affliction and strife, and our country be sound in body and spirit. Amen. A prayer for the state of Israel, page 377. Avinu Shabashamayim Tzur Yisrael v'Goalo Barech et Medinat Yisrael Reshit Tzmichat Geulatenu. Again Aleha be'evrat chastecha ufros aleh sukat shlomecha ushlach orcha v'amitcha l'rasheha sareha v'yoatzea v'tatnem be'etzah tova milfanecha v'natata shalom ba'aretz v'simchat olam liyoshveha v'nomar Amen. O Heavenly One, Protector and Redeemer of Israel, bless the state of Israel, which marks the dawning of hope for all who seek peace. Shield it beneath the wings of your love, spread over it the canopy of your peace. Send your light and truth to all who lead and advise, guiding them with your good counsel. Establish peace in the land and fullness of joy for all who dwell there. Amen. And we will remain standing in body or spirit as we turn back to page 374, as we return the Torah to its more comfortable spot. Yehallelu et Shem Adonai, ki niskav shemo levado, hodo al haaretz v'shamayim, vayarem keren li'amo, tehila lechol, asidav livnei Yisrael am kirovo. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Ki lekach tov natati lachem torati al tazovu. Et chaim ehi lama chazikim ba v'tomecheha meusha teracheha darchei noam v'chol netivoteha shalom. Hashivenu Adonai elecha ben hashuva. Chadesh, Chadesh Yameinu, Chadesh Yameinu, Kekedem. We'll now rise as we turn to page 586 at the bottom of the page, Aleinu L'Shabbat. Aleinu L'Shabbat, Ladon HaKol, Latet Kedula Liotzer Breshit, Shelo Asanu Kegoye Haratzot, Velo Samanu Kemishmechot Adama, Shelo Samachelkenu Kahem, Vegor Aleinu Kechol Hamunam, Vanahafnu Korim Uishtachabim Umodim Lifnei Melech Malchei Halachim Akadosh Baruch Hu V'nehemar V'haya Adonai Lemelech Al Kol Haaretz Bayom Hahu Yeh Adonai Echad Ushemo, Shemo, Ushemo, Echad. I'll invite those in mourning and those observing yahrzeit to please rise in body or spirit as we first remember those in our community who passed in recent months. Miles Ambrose, Morris Dickstein, Fred Eber, Edwin Friedman, Sandra Furman, Evelyn Gelb, Lucy Gladstone, Lois Herr, Phyllis Katz, Jeanette Kopp, Madge Judith Parcher, Steve Popkin, Danielle Lisa Rigg, Geraldine Rosen, Paul Silver, Joan Strong Tengzilius, Virginia Tizer, Marjorie Weinberg Berman, and Ann Weiss. We also marked the art sites that occurred during the last week for Bernard Baumstein, Koppel Berger, Ruth Bitterman, Irving Cassell, Leon Fagan, Ilsa Fowler, Bob Fisher, Hyman Heller, Ava Hesse, Irving Kellman, William Cosberg, Beatrice Punkin, Elena Lager, Maria Lemos, Howard Mazel, Danny Peskowitz, Henry Posner, Robert Saltzman, Martha Spitzer, Beatrice Tarlow, and Laura Weiss. If you're thinking of anyone else this morning we didn't mention, now would be the time to mention their names. I'll invite the mourners to join me now on page 598. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, ve'alma divra chirutei ve'amlich malchutei, v'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael, v'agalav v'zman kariv v'imru, amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevarach le'olam le'olei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtavach v'yitpa'ar v'yitraman v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei d'kudsha b'richu. Le'elam min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata da'amiram ve'alma v'imru, amen. Yehei shalom rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru, amen. Oseh shalom imramav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru, amen. Zichronam livracha, may every one of their memories be for a blessing. If you're still standing at home, please be seated. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. A few quick announcements. First, of course, is to join us for Torah study beginning at 12 o'clock on Zoom. We also want to wish a mazel tov to our wonderful Reeve Wiener, who is going to become bat mitzvah a little bit later this afternoon, and a mincha service, a quiet one just with the family. Again, that will be later this afternoon, but we wish her a mazel tov and to her entire family, and to Jason and Anna, who are very, very proud, obviously, of her. And I hope sometime in the near future that you'll get a chance to spend some time with Reeve, because she's really just an exceptional person. She's going to teach some great Torah today too, for sure. Just a reminder that this coming week, Nida Mitzvah will be meeting on Monday as it has been on Zoom at 11:30. Hebrew School will be in Zoom at 4 o'clock. Social Justice Committee will have its regular virtual meeting at 5. And then a reminder of our special 7 o'clock program sponsored by the Social Justice Committee entitled Prosecuting Hate, a Conversation for the Community, which includes members of the new Suffolk County Hate Crimes Task Force. Also a reminder that my class on Rabbi Abraham Joshua and the Heschel and the Prophets, which normally meets on Wednesdays at noon, will not meet this Wednesday at noon, but instead on Friday at noon. However, B'nai Mitzvah will meet later that day at 4 o'clock and post B'nai Mitzvah later at 6 o'clock. On Thursday at 5, we are continuing our Veritable Menches series with an exhibit presented by the New York Historical Society titled So Ready for Laughter, Bob Hope and World War II. The special exhibition highlights the legendary performer and his unique role during World War II, entertaining troops overseas with the USO. Reminder of my class on A Journey to the Heart of the Siddur is Fridays at 9 a.m. Again, this class is open to all, and it's being recorded and shared usually within a few hours of the conclusion of the class. So even if you can't make Fridays at 9, if you just like to be a part of the learning, just make sure that you register for the class, and I'll know to include you in the weekly emails. Coming up on Sunday, May 16th, and this is really the most remarkable thing, we will mark a very exciting moment in our long and storied history here at the temple with a groundbreaking ceremony at the beginning of our renovation. So we are going to do it with a handful of people live, and the rest of us will be watching live stream. For COVID reasons, we are significantly restricted in terms of how many people we can have present. But certainly we're going to set up the live streaming in the best possible way that we can. We want everybody to be as involved as we possibly can. And really, it's bittersweet to see our beloved building eventually come down in some form or the other, and even the sanctuary will be retained, that the other part itself will be revitalized.
A lot of memories, a lot of wonderful moments in those spaces. But I think we can all acknowledge that this is really a remarkable step, long time coming after a lot of hard work. And so we really hope that a lot of our community will be able to, even if not in person, virtually be a part of that experience so we can all celebrate together. So a reminder, it'll be live streamed to our webpage, to YouTube, and to Facebook as well. Also a reminder, later that evening is the beginning of Shavuot, and as we did last year, my good friend Rabbi Josh Franklin and I from Josh Franklin from the Jewish Center of the Hamptons and I will teach together on Zoom with our colleague and friend Rabbi David Wyman, who is going to, we're all going to be teaching around the topic of troubling Jewish texts and how to understand them. So again, that'll be at 7:30 on the Sunday, the May 16th. And then a reminder that Shavuot morning services, including a Yizkor service, will be live streamed on Monday, May 17th at 10 a.m. For all of our regular stuff, please look for our weekly e-blasts on the calendar on the website. And if for any reason you are not getting the information that you need or deserve, please let Eileen know in the office and she will be happy to help. So we're going to conclude our service before Kiddush with a closing song. Let's do PL, which is on 632. I was singing this to Eva last night, so it's in my head. Mipiel, Elvarach Yisrael, Ein Adir Kadonai, Vein Baruch, Vein Amram, Ein Gedolah Katorah, Vein Dasheneha Yisrael. Mipiel, Elvarach Yisrael, Ein Hadur Kadonai, Vein Vatik, Vein Amram, Ein Zaka Katorah, Vein Chochamecha Yisrael, Mipiel, Yevarach Kol Yisrael, Ein Tahor Kadonai, Vein Yachik, Vein Amram, Ein Kabira Katorah, Vein Lamdenecha Yisrael, Mipiel, Yevarach Kol Yisrael, Ein Kodek Adonai, Vein Tzadik, Vein Amram, Ein Kedosha Katorah, Vein Tomchecha Yisrael, Mipiel, Yevarach Kol Yisrael. And if you have a glass with you, please turn to page 604. You can join me for Kiddush. Veshamru bnei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, lahasot et ha-Shabbat, ledorotam berit olam. Beini uvein bnei Yisrael, oti leolam, oti leolam. Veshamru bnei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, lahasot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam berit olam. Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et ha-shamayim ve'et ha'aretz, veshamru bnei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, lahasot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam berit olam. Uvayom hashvi Shabbat, vayinafash Shabbat, vayinafash, veshamru bnei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, lahasot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam berit olam. Al ken berach Adonai et yom ha-Shabbat vayikadshehu safrim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Amen. Okay. L'chaim, everyone. Shabbat shalom. Hope to see you for Torah study in just a little bit. Again, starting at noon. If not, have a wonderful rest of your Shabbat. Be restful on this Shabbat if you can. And please be safe. Take care of yourselves and each other. Build that community of goodness, and hope to see you very soon. Shabbat shalom.